Do you know what the most sophisticated weapon a narcissist uses to control you is? It's not the cruel criticisms. It's not the punishing silence, and it's not the dramatic outbursts. Their most dangerous weapon is the calculated apology, timed perfectly, appearing sincere, but in truth a carefully designed trap. Because for a narcissist, an apology isn't about change. It's a tool to bring you back to the place they want you, under their control. An apology from a narcissist is not the beginning of healing. It's a reset button in the cycle of manipulation. They know you're forgiving. They know you were raised to believe in compassion, and they know that forgiveness is your sweet vulnerability, a door they can walk through at will, as long as they show up with a few excuses and just enough fake emotion. The problem is, you want to believe that everyone can change. You want to believe that this time will be different. You cling to their apology like a thread of hope, because deep inside you still want to repair what's been broken. But what you don't realize is this: forgiveness is not the end of wrongdoing, it's the continuation of power. They don't see you as someone healing, they see you as someone who can still be controlled. Once you forgive, the old behaviors return, only more subtle, more disguised. They'll say, "I already apologized, why are you still bringing it up?" They'll make you feel guilty for not moving on like a forgiving person should, and when you finally stand your ground, they'll change roles. Suddenly they're the misunderstood victim, and you soften again, you question yourself again, and just like that, they're back in control. The trap lies in the hypocrisy dressed in loving words. Narcissists are experts at using the very values that society holds dear: tolerance, compassion, the longing to fix what's broken. They borrow these moral standards to make you feel guilty for setting boundaries, for daring to say, "I can't keep forgiving what never changes." And while you're struggling, caught between heart and mind, they're watching. Like an emotional radar technician, they read every reaction. Every time you give in, they record it. Every time you open up, they calculate the depth of your wound. Forgiveness doesn't make them feel loved. It reassures them that the game is still on. Every apology, every tear, every hug after the storm, it all serves a purpose. Not to heal, but to trap you in a cycle where you are always expected to rise above, while they never have to face real consequences. And if one day you finally stop forgiving, they'll say you've changed, that you're no longer yourself, as if you betrayed the trust, not them. The truth is, forgiveness when given to the wrong person won't set you free. It will keep you bound. Forgiveness should never be a requirement to be seen as a good person, and a narcissist doesn't deserve your forgiveness if all they want is another chance to repeat the cycle. This video will help you see the hidden mechanics behind the trap called compassion, a trap narcissists use to manipulate, to control, and to turn your kindness into an emotional chain. If you've ever felt like you forgave too many times, if you're exhausted from being kind to someone who refuses to change, then this message is for you. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and stay with us until the end. Because awakening doesn't begin with their apology, it begins the moment you stop giving chances to someone who never valued the first one. One of the clearest signs that you're trapped in a narcissist's forgiveness game is when you start feeling like you're apologizing for both of you. You're the one who has to bow your head, the one expected to be the bigger person, the one always trying to make peace, even when you're the one who got hurt. Meanwhile, they sit back, watching you wrestle with your own emotions and self-worth. Forgiveness, at that point, is no longer a free act. It becomes a duty imposed by subtle manipulation. You'll start to notice that their apologies always come with conditions. "I'm sorry, but you need to understand that." Or, "I was wrong, but if you hadn't reacted that way, none of this would have happened." These apologies aren't about taking responsibility, they're about sharing it. They drag you into a shared emotional pit where every mistake becomes a joint fault. This is a dangerous strategy, making you believe that the pain was something both of you created, and that means you must forgive, even the part that was never yours to carry. You'll also find yourself forgiving too quickly. After every argument, the narcissist may go silent until you reach out first, or return with some sweet, unexpected gesture that leaves you confused. And before you've even had a chance to process what happened, you're pulled back into the relationship. There's no time to reflect on the truth, no space to grieve or feel. There's only one unspoken rule: everything must be forgotten quickly, as long as they remain at the center. Another sign of this trap is the relentless repetition of behaviors that once hurt you. You forgive, hoping it won't happen again, but it does, not because you didn't love enough, but because the narcissist has no motivation to change. Your forgiveness becomes proof that they can do it again, and you'll stay. They learn that your boundaries carry no consequence, and they exploit that to the fullest. You may even feel guilty for being angry. Every time you try to express your true emotions, you're labeled as bitter, unable to let go, or lacking grace. Narcissists are so skilled they make you apologize for being the one who's hurt. They flip the script, turning themselves into the victim and making you question your memory, your instincts, and your moral compass. This is when you can no longer tell the difference between true forgiveness and spiritual self-destruction. And finally, the most dangerous sign is when you don't even realize you're being manipulated. You live in a constant state of inner turmoil. You try to stay positive. You tell yourself everyone makes mistakes, no one is perfect, love requires forgiveness. But all these reasons serve only one purpose: to keep you locked in a cycle the other person never intends to leave. They're there to repeat, and you're there to forgive. If you see yourself in one or more of these patterns, don't be too quick to blame yourself, because manipulation through forgiveness is one of the most subtle tactics in the narcissist's playbook. They don't need to scream. They don't need to force you. All they need are a few tears, a few sweet words, and your deep faith in the values you hold sacred: kindness, compassion, and the hope for change. But you must remember, forgiveness should never be the tool that keeps you in injustice. Forgiveness should never be the reason someone gets to keep hurting you, and forgiveness should never come at the cost of your goodness or your dignity. A narcissist may claim they've forgiven you. They might post profound quotes about letting go, about releasing to find peace, about rising above. They may present themselves as calm, righteous, and mature, but behind that flawless mask lies a truth that's hard to face. They haven't let go of anything. For them, forgiveness isn't an inner journey, it's a PR move, a tool to manipulate appearances and maintain power. The reason narcissists can't truly forgive is because real forgiveness requires something they can't do: admit they've been hurt. Forgiveness demands humility, a recognition that they are not the center of the universe, that others make mistakes, that people have blind spots. But narcissists build their entire identity on the illusion of perfection, invincibility, and superiority. To admit pain would be to admit weakness, and that threatens the fragile ego they guard with everything they have. True forgiveness requires honest emotional contact with pain, disappointment, anger, and fear. But narcissists avoid real emotions like a plague. They don't enter their inner world to process pain. They rewrite reality to protect their self-image. They'll say things like, "I'm too evolved to be bothered," or act like they're above negativity, all while secretly harboring bitterness and a thirst for revenge. A truly empathetic person can see behavior in context, separating actions from a person's worth. But narcissists don't do that. They don't empathize. They personalize everything. If you mess up, it's not because you're hurt, confused, or human. It's because you betrayed them, humiliated them, or tried to harm them. They exaggerate their own wounds and label you as the problem, all while refusing to self-reflect. The narcissist's inner world is governed by a win-lose mentality, and forgiveness requires balance. It means letting go of the need to win. But that doesn't align with how they see life. Forgiveness makes them feel like they're losing power, moral superiority, and emotional control. They don't want balance, they want dominance. Forgiveness is an act of equality, and narcissists only feel safe when they're above you, when you owe them emotionally. Instead of truly forgiving, they weaponize the past. They remember every tiny mistake, not to learn from it or improve the relationship, but to use it when you dare to take a stand. When you push back, they'll say, "I forgave you for that, and this is how you treat me?" That seemingly gracious line is actually a chain of guilt, binding you in place, making you second-guess your right to speak up, and from there they manipulate your behavior, your decisions, even your sense of self-worth. Even if you've apologized, made amends, and changed, the narcissist will hold on to that old wound like a trump card, not because they can't forget, but because they don't want to. As long as you feel guilty, they can keep demanding atonement. They want you to work endlessly to earn forgiveness that was never truly given. They may smile in front of others, acting graceful and forgiving, but behind closed doors they bring up the past through cold stares, passive-aggressive jabs, or heavy silences that remind you, you once did wrong. Forgiveness doesn't live in their behavior. It doesn't exist in their inner life. If anything, their forgiveness is just a strategy, a way to win emotional arguments and appear morally superior. Here's the deeper, more dangerous truth. Narcissists don't just withhold forgiveness from others, they can't even forgive themselves. Beneath the arrogance and contempt lies a deep, unresolved shame, a wound they've buried so deeply they'll do anything not to feel it. They despise weakness because they once felt small, humiliated, and never good enough. And because they never learned how to heal, they live in denial, hurting the very people who show the empathy they envy and resent. The truth is, narcissists don't seek forgiveness to heal because they're not seeking healing, they're seeking control. They don't want you to move on from the pain because once you heal, they lose their central role in your story. They can't let go because letting go would mean losing power, and to them, losing power means losing themselves. So, the next time a narcissist tells you they've forgiven you, pay close attention. Do they still use the past to flip the script? Do they still make you feel like you have something to prove? Do they truly act as if the wound is healed, or are they just keeping it tucked away in their pocket, waiting to pull it out again? Forgiveness in the hands of a narcissist is not the end of pain. It's a quiet form of control. It doesn't set you free. It reminds you that you're still playing a game, and they're the ones writing the rules. Forgiveness is meant to be a liberating act, but in the hands of a narcissist it becomes something twisted, an unspoken contract where the more you forgive, the tighter their grip on you becomes. That fresh start you hoped for is merely a more polished version of the same toxic cycle. You're not being set free, they're just scoring another win. And with every win, you lose a little more of your intuition, your trust, and your dignity. The narcissist understands something deeply. You don't forgive because you're weak. You forgive because you have compassion. But they don't respect that. They exploit it. Every apology, no matter how sincere it sounds, is actually a test of your limits. They want to know how long until you cave, how many explanations will it take to pull you back in, and once you return, they're reassured. You haven't gone far enough to be truly free. Here's the danger. The more patient you are, the more hopeful you remain, the more you begin to feel guilty for not being forgiving enough. They plant the idea that if this relationship fails, it's because you didn't love hard enough, didn't forgive deep enough, didn't endure long enough. Gently, almost invisibly, they shift the blame from the one who harmed to the one who was harmed. And you, worn thin by misplaced trust, once again carry guilt for pain that was never yours to bear. This is the blind spot in the trap. You think forgiveness will restore balance, but in reality, you're draining yourself to sustain a relationship that was never equal. You're holding it together for both of you. You keep the bond while they keep the power. And in that dynamic, forgiveness doesn't bring healing, it reinforces dependency. So how do you break the cycle? First, you must understand this. Forgiveness does not mean permission. You can release the anger in your heart and still say no to someone who refuses to honor your boundaries. Forgiveness is not a free pass for bad behavior, and you are not obligated to stay just to prove how kind you are. Next, let changed behavior guide you, not empty words. If someone is truly sorry, they will shift how they act. how they respond, how they honor your limits without being asked. But if they keep hurting you while expecting understanding, that's not remorse, that's manipulation. Third, learn to withhold your response from what doesn't deserve it. Narcissists survive on your reaction. They need you to explain, argue, defend, because your emotional engagement tells them they still hold power. But when you stop reacting, when you step back, when you set boundaries and actually uphold them, their power begins to fade. And finally, most importantly, you must forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for giving too many chances. Forgive yourself for believing in change that never came. Forgive yourself for returning simply because you didn't want to be the one who walked away. Only when you let go of that guilt can you step out of the trap, not with bitterness, but with clarity and compassion for your own heart. You weren't born to live stuck in the loop of false forgiveness. You deserve safety. You deserve clarity. You deserve love that isn't laced with manipulation. And sometimes the most powerful act of love you can offer is to say no to the one who always expected you to say yes. Forgiveness should never be an obligation. It is not the only sign of maturity or love, and it is certainly not the only path to healing. In truth, forgiveness, when misunderstood, can become the most dangerous weapon in the hands of a manipulator. That's why the first step to recovery after a relationship with a narcissist is to redefine what forgiveness truly means. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not require you to erase memories, dismiss pain, or pretend like nothing ever happened. In its healthy form, forgiveness is your decision to release anger so that negative emotions no longer control you. But at the same time, you still have the right to hold on to the truth, protect your boundaries, and say no to what is unworthy of you. You do not need to forgive to prove you're a good person, and you don't need to forgive in order to start a new chapter. Sometimes that next chapter begins the moment you stop seeking forgiveness or approval from people who were never worthy of it. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to someone else. It is the space you create for yourself to feel safe, clear-minded, and free from manipulation. And that healing only truly begins when you learn to rebuild your boundaries. Boundaries are what narcissists hate most, because boundaries deny them control. When you say, "I don't agree, I need space," or "I won't accept the way you're treating me," you're reclaiming the emotional territory they've tried to own for far too long. Setting boundaries doesn't have to be loud. You don't have to scream, threaten, or retaliate. What you need is consistency, actions that match your words. The quiet strength to not let someone return to a place they no longer deserve. Boundaries are not walls that keep the world out. They're fences that protect the garden within, where your self-worth, peace, and emotional wisdom are carefully cultivated. As you begin to redefine forgiveness and rebuild boundaries, you'll notice something powerful. You no longer react to their usual games. You stop feeling the need to explain yourself all the time. You stop fearing the labels, too harsh, too cold, too distant. You stop feeling guilty for walking away, for keeping your distance, or for finally choosing to love yourself. That doesn't mean you won't feel pain, but the pain will have purpose. Pain that helps you grow, not repeat. Pain that helps you understand, not shrink. And from that pain, you'll rebuild the foundation of a life no longer controlled by someone who once used forgiveness as an emotional leash. You have the right to forgive, but you are not obligated to. You have the freedom to let go without erasing the memory. You have the power to move forward without turning back to save someone who never intended to change. And when you finally step out of that trap, you won't just find yourself again. You'll reclaim a power that had been hidden for far too long, the power to live unmanipulated by your own goodness. Forgiveness was never the problem. The problem is that you were taught to forgive people who had no intention of changing. You were encouraged to be compassionate toward repeated harm. You were expected to be the bigger person while your own heart remained unhealed. And worse, You were made to believe that if you didn't forgive, you were the bad one. But the truth is different. Forgiveness is not surrender. Forgiveness does not mean taking down your boundaries, erasing your memories, or reopening the door to someone who once broke you. Forgiveness is not a denial of pain. It's a declaration that pain no longer defines you. And most importantly, forgiveness should never be twisted into a moral obligation. It is a personal choice, a free act. If it's done out of pressure, out of fear of judgment, or because the other person is waiting for you to let it go, then it's not forgiveness. It's the sacrifice of self-respect to maintain an unbalanced relationship. A narcissist does not deserve your forgiveness if they use it to weaken you, if they repeat the same hurtful behaviors, and if they show no effort to change. You are not responsible for healing both sides. You were never meant to carry the emotional weight of being the only adult in a relationship where the other person refuses to grow. You can forgive without granting access. You can love and still keep your distance. And you can let go of the past, not because they deserve it, but because you've become strong enough to no longer carry it. True freedom begins the moment you realize you are no longer manipulated by the things that used to hold you hostage. The promises, the tears, the conditional apologies. Freedom is when you no longer need to play the role of the bigger person just to survive. Freedom is when you finally understand protecting your heart doesn't make you cruel, it makes you wise. If today you are on the journey of letting go of a relationship with a narcissist, know this: you are doing the bravest thing a person can do, saying no to what's toxic and saying yes to truth, to value, to the version of yourself you are finally becoming. You don't need anyone's forgiveness for that. And you certainly don't need to offer forgiveness to someone who used your goodness to control you. You only need one thing: to believe that you deserve a life free from manipulation. And every step you take away from that trap is a step back into your true freedom. If this video touched something in you, please subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs to wake up, and comment below what's something you once forgave that now you know you never needed to tolerate. Thank you for walking this path with us. Keep choosing truth, keep choosing clarity, and above all, keep choosing you.